Hey everyone, it's me, John, this time coming to you from California. I'm such a jet setter. I do think it's pretty cool that last Friday's episode was from Italy and this week we're from California. Hey everyone, welcome to Johnny Vlogs. Before we get started on my big VidCon wrap-up, I have a couple of people to thank. First of all, I want to thank Christy, who came to the meetup and made an in-person donation. Very, very kind of you, Christy. I really appreciate that. I know there are some people that just don't want to do the Patreon thing. You guys have found some very interesting ways to get to me. Also, Scott, who came to the meetup, drove 5 hours to get there. Thank you so much, Scott. I really appreciated getting to spend some time with you and your wife. Outside of that, we have to thank our Patreon supporters that have just come on, starting with Christopher Carpenter, Jessica Dreeskins, I hope I'm saying that right, Christy Elliott, and Heidi H. Thank each and every one of you for supporting the show, for keeping me here, doing what I love doing, and for allowing me to donate to many of the causes that we look into here on the channel. Really, really appreciate you guys from the bottom of my heart. So, VidCon, how was it? What was this thing all about? Let me just say my brain's kind of mushy because after 3 days of meetings, just taking in a ton of information, it'll kind of get to you. Last time I came, I only did 2 days. So there was something about this third day where I just noticed my brain was, I'd be in a panel and it would just start tuning out, and I had to really work to keep my focus. But I got to see many of the creators that I love. I had, of course, my meeting with Cenk from the Young Turks. And it was kind of weird because I noticed when I mentioned that on Johnny Vlogs last week that there was a lot of people. There was like a split in my audience that happened over that. And it kind of sucks because I thought I explained it pretty well in the video. For me, it's not really about political affiliation. I listen to stuff from Alex Jones, I listen to stuff from the Young Turks, and I even listen to Lizard Men Are Taking Over the World stuff from David Icke. I do that because I am interested in the extremes in those conversations because I want to understand those viewpoints, and that allows me to kind of gauge where I'm at in that conversation as well. I think people that want to write off other people's opinions strictly because they're in some shape of a political box that someone else has defined, for me personally, I don't find a lot of value in that, because if you can't listen to those other viewpoints, how do you really know if those ideas are good or bad or garbage or whatever? And I think part of the strength of my channel, and I think a big reason why a lot of you appreciate coming to the channel, is because you know that I am constantly trying to remain unbiased. I understand that there are biases in each and every one of us that a lot of us don't understand very well, but I work extremely hard to try to understand my own biases. And it's funny because that was actually a big topic that came up, particularly in the Philip DeFranco conversation that I joined, or that I watched. They called it a fireside chat, which I think they called it that because the lighting was so bad in that one. Here's a picture from it so you can see what I'm talking about. But I think there is value, and I think it is a different type of YouTuber that is able to talk about the extremes in the conversation and represent both of those in a fair way. So that is what I'm striving to do. Admittedly, I might not always get it right, but I think many of you recognize that that is the goal out there. It was great to see Philip DeFranco, someone that I watch regularly. I also got to see Andre Meadows, who I watch pretty often. Boogie2988, who is almost a daily view for me. I've kind of fallen off a little bit lately, but it was great because I've watched his content for so long, so to see him in person. I did notice a strange effect, though. It's a bit interesting that when you're in a room, particularly in a convention format, you're sitting in rows of chairs and they're up on a stage, it almost feels less personal than when you're actually watching them on YouTube, because you feel like they're talking to you, like they're right there. You're usually getting a very good shot of them very up close, and if they're doing it right, they're being very open and intimate with you as they're speaking. And when you see them in a convention format and they're speaking to an audience of several hundred, I think it changes how they approach the audience. When I record these things, I'm not thinking of my 32,000 subscribers out there. I'm really thinking of one person that I'm having this conversation with, you. So it was really interesting for me to bump into these situations where I'm seeing people live in person, and it's almost not quite as exciting as when I'm actually watching their videos. If you were going to ask me if I saw or who I would have been most excited to see at VidCon, I would say hands down Adam the Woo. As a matter of fact, I made specific trips down to the convention floor where I would just circle the floor and see if I could spot him. I think he's like 6'3" or something. So in a sea of teenage girls, I think it's pretty easy to find guys that are over 6 feet. But unfortunately, it just wasn't in the cards. I could not find him. I watched his videos from here, and that was almost more frustrating because it's like, when was he standing there? I walked by that place 5-6 times yesterday, but it just wasn't in the cards. I truly believe at some point that I will get to meet him and just let him know how awesome I think his content is. And I think it's kind of interesting that he is now living in Hollywood, living very close to a place where I worked for 5 years, down on Hollywood Boulevard. And I look forward to his videos because I know I'm going to see a bunch of places that are like, hey, I used to eat lunch there. So didn't get to see my favorite YouTuber, but got to see a lot of YouTubers that I really respect, and to hear their opinions on issues that affect me as well as them. I mean, to hear Philip DeFranco talk about his ad revenue dropping, to talk about videos being demonetized. That was one of the things that I brought up with Jank in my conversation was with him, and it just kind of helped me. It made me feel like I wasn't alone in this, because when I was originally getting demonetized, nobody was talking about it. I was doing searches, I couldn't find any information on it. But when I asked Jank about it face to face, he let me know. And the Young Turks are one of the first organizations that became official YouTube partners. So they've been dealing in this ad revenue thing for way longer than I have. And he was very clear that, yeah, they get demonetized on certain stories regularly. And I appreciated this because this is the same conclusion I eventually came to. They decided that the content is more important, that it's important for them to put their opinion out there, and to not worry about monetization necessarily. And that's just another reason why I really appreciate you Patreon supporters so much, because it just allows me that extra piece of flexibility where, I don't have to be counting pennies that I'm making from YouTube. And if they decide that my most popular show, for some reason, I'm not going to get the pennies from that show for this month, it could make a really big difference. But having you guys with the Patreon support really, really helps with that. So I learned a lot about trying to kind of diversify my business a little bit with YouTube, maybe even looking at other platforms, but looking at other ways to generate money around that. You guys know, obviously, that I've kicked on the Lord and Art store recently. We'll see. I have a whole bunch of new ideas. We'll kind of play with it as I go forward. I've got another change that I haven't quite told you guys about yet that's coming up. You might remember from my videos about when I moved out to Minnesota that we were actually renting the place we were living in because I wanted to make sure that we were happy out there before we bought something. We are now moving again because we're moving into a house that we've purchased. So the set will likely change somewhat. I'm kind of thinking about changes around that I'd like to see. But if nothing else, my lifestyle will be improving quite a bit. We're moving into a nice place. We spent a lot of time trying to find the right house that had the right kind of space for me to do videos and all that. So I think we found it, and I'm just looking forward to this whole new chapter. That's something that I kind of forgot from VidCon when I was here 2 years ago, and I think it's really important and probably a big reason why I will come to VidCon, I think annually, at least in the foreseeable future. The sense of community that you get, being able to hear about problems that way bigger content creators are having that are also affecting you. it just really helps you feel like you're not alone, because, you know, in a lot of what I do, it's very solo type work. I mean, yes, I have people that help me with research. Yes, I have Christy who keeps me up to date on all the cases I talk about. But outside of that, when it comes down to turn on the camera, talk to the camera, shut off the camera, pull that into an editing suite, edit the whole thing together, upload it to YouTube, make sure that you include all your sources, name it right, tag it right, post it, make sure that it goes to Twitter. It's all me. So it's great to hear that there's even some big content creators out there that is their game. That is just the way that they operate. And maybe there is a point where that changes. Maybe that there is a point where I bring on more partners and I can shift some of that work and kind of move on to do things a little bit differently than we do right now. And I think VidCon helps me identify that. Even when I look at the types of sessions that I joined this time as opposed to last time, vastly different topics that I went looking for. So I really just appreciate kind of a renewed energy. I feel like my batteries have been recharged, and I'm just looking forward to getting back and to seeing what we can do with the channel to keep it growing, to help these cases that we talk about, to help raise exposure to them, to hopefully help bring solutions in some of those cases, to bring empathy to those cases, to let those families know that other people are thinking about them, trying to help them, working for them, even if they don't know us personally. All those things that I just love about this community, and you are a huge part of that. I can't do it without you. So thank you so much for just being a part of all this. And let's roll forward from here and see what else we can do in 2017 and into the future. Thank you so much for hanging out with me on this episode of Johnny Vlogs. I hope you have a great Monday. I hope you have an amazing week. Come right back here tomorrow for another show on the Lord and Arts channel, and I'll see you there.